time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with a recitation of Psalm 23, thus linking the life of Gertie Denn with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people of Israel and the eternity of God. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Lo Atzar, Benodesha Yarbiteni, Almei Menuchot Inachaleni, Nafshi Yeshovev, Yancheni B'mat Letzedek L'ma'an Shemo, Gam Ki Elek B'geit Salmavet Lo Irara, Ki Ata Imadi, Shivtecha Vishantecha, Heme Yanachamuni, Ta'aroch Lefanai Shulchan Neged Sorarai, Deshanta Bashemen Roshi Kosin Rabaya, Ach Tov V'Chesed Yitafuni Kol Yemei Chayai, V'Shavti B'Beit Adonai L'Orech Yamim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We have come together this afternoon with hearts full of sorrow to show our abiding love and deep respect for Gertie Denn, the mother of Bernard and Gail, Stephen and Dina, Brian and Aviva, and Mayor and Marnie, the grandmother of Ron and Shane, Erica, Daniela, and Zach, Tone, Maury, Brit, and Chen, and Sydney, Jordan, and Xander, and the great-grandmother of 12 great-grandchildren. We recall all the many blessings of her life, and we thank God for all that was good and true in her life and the precious memories which shall endure. The Jewish tradition emphasizes living life to its fullest, making the most of our existence on earth, being good, kind, compassionate, fair, and honest, and expressing love for our family, our friends, and for all of humanity. Although we firmly believe that this is not all there is to life, for our soul's existence, and that there is an olam haba, an afterlife, that is beyond anything that we can imagine, our tradition nevertheless teaches us to live fully in this world and not to obsess about what will come after, but rather to have faith that God will reward us appropriately when the time comes. There's a beautiful poem which captures this Jewish perspective on life, a poem which is particularly illuminating when we have lost someone close to us. It is titled The Measure of a Life. Not how did she die, but how did she live? Not what did she gain, but what did she give? These are the units to measure the worth of a person as a person, regardless of birth. Not what was her station, but had she a heart, and how did she play her God-given part? Was she ready with a word of good cheer, to bring back a smile, to banish a tear? Not what was her shrine, nor what was her creed, but had she befriended those really in need? Not what did the sketch in the newspaper say, but how many were sorry when she passed away? By these standards, and by whatever standards we may measure the life of a person, Gertie Denn lived a truly beautiful and meaningful life, a life full of love, exuberance, and determination. She was the life of every party, with a vivacious and outgoing personality, and a perennially youthful mind. Gertie was born in Houston, Texas on June 25, 1923, to Mayor and Fanny Rosenzweig. She was by far the youngest of 5 siblings. Mary, Morris, Eddie, Leon, and Abe were older than her by from 12 to 21 years. Being so much younger in the family, she was always considered the baby, even when she was fully grown. Everyone in the family doted on her. The entire family lived in Houston except for Leon, who moved to New Orleans when he grew up. The Rosenzweig family had a long history of musical talent, and Gertie certainly maintained that family tradition. She learned to play the piano from Morris's wife Frida, starting at the young age of 8. Her musical talent was extraordinary. She could read sheet music, of course, but she could also play by ear. Just listening to a melody, she could reproduce it on the ivory keys. She could transpose the key to accommodate any singer. After graduating San Jacinto High School in 1940, she participated in a female orchestra during the war. It would also play on the local radio stations and in various venues around town. In March of 1946, she was hired to play for a wedding. At the rehearsal dinner on March 3rd, she met the brother of the groom, a man named Denn, who was so taken by her that he asked her out for a date that very night. Gertie obviously felt the same way because the two of them were almost immediately a couple, getting married only 6 months later on September 1st, 1946. Gertie did not play piano at her own wedding, of course, but her cousin, Irving Wadler, who was also an extraordinary musician, played the violin at the wedding. After their wedding, Sidney and Gertie moved to New Orleans to work for Gertie's brother there. They stayed in New Orleans for a year, and Gertie would often refer to that year as their year-long honeymoon, because it was so exciting to be a part of New Orleans life at that time. At the end of the year, Sidney decided to move back to his hometown of Bay City and to open a business with his brothers, an Army surplus store that eventually became the Denn Brothers Sporting Goods store. The three brothers shared the business responsibilities. One kept the books, one did all the ordering of goods and supplies, and Sidney was the people person, the salesman who handled all the customers. Meanwhile, the three wives also formed a business of their own. Rosie, Helen, and Gertie opened a used furniture and antique store called the House of Bargains. Sidney and Gertie were truly in love, and their marriage lasted for 50 years. Together, the couple had 4 boys, Bernard, Stephen, Brian, and Mary. And they loved all 4 of their children and were very devoted to each one of them. They raised their children to be good-hearted, educated, honest, and compassionate. They also raised them to have a very strong Jewish identity, something that was not always easy to do in a small town like Bay City. The store had to be open on Shabbat, for instance, because that was the major day for business. But Sidney put on tefillin every day. They would often drive into Houston to get kosher meat from Goodman's, and the rabbi in Bay City would invite all the kids over to his home for a Shabbat meal. The family maintained a membership at the shul in Wharton. Gertie was a lifetime member of Hadassah, and the kids were all active in Young Judea. On Sundays, the family would drive into Houston to visit Gertie's family. When they were growing up, the 4 sons had many friends in town, and all of their friends wanted to come to the Denn home because Gertie and Sidney were so cool and hip. Gertie never thought of herself as an old person. Never. She kept current in the younger generation's music and culture. And because of her outgoing personality, she was a real hit among the kids. The family were also major community leaders, always supporting community events and institutions. Stephen became the camp director at Camp Young Judea. And in 1975, Brian decided to go to Israel with Young Judea. He fell in love with the Jewish state, and soon also fell in love with a young woman named Aviva. And he made Aliyah, and they were married at Ain Gedi Nature Reserve in 1977. Gertie flew in for the wedding. Their son Mayer was elected to the city council of Bay City when he was only 18. Gertie could not have been more proud of him. Sidney lived to see 3 of his 4 sons get married. In 1996, Gertie and Sidney celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. Still living in Bay City, Gertie reminded Sidney that he had promised that they would move back to Houston one day, to which Sidney said, "Well, I lied." But the 50th wedding anniversary party was a major family event. All of the family came into town to celebrate. It was a memorable and very sweet occasion. 2 months after the celebration, though, Sidney passed away. Soon after that, Gertie did move to Houston to be near her own family. She loved Houston. She loved her synagogue, Beth Yeshurun. and she continued to love playing piano. She also was an avid mahjong player and had regular game nights. She played piano every Shabbat at 7 Acres to entertain the residents there, and she also played for Beth Assurance Guest Club and at other venues. She was a very active lady with a very busy schedule. For Sukkot of 2013, Gertie took another trip to Israel with her son Meir and his family for 12 days. They spent a lot of time with Brian and his family in Israel. It was so uplifting and so enchanting for Gertie to spend time with her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. What a wonderful time she had. Last November, Gertie received an honorary high school diploma on behalf of her late husband, Sidney. The town of Bay City wanted to give Sidney this honor on Veterans Day, November 11th of 2014. The entire town was there for the occasion, and Gertie received a standing ovation. Her sons were able to watch all of the proceedings on the internet. Gertie's life was absolutely a full and blessed one. In 1968, she was diagnosed with melanoma. She was scheduled to have surgery, which was going to be followed by some chemotherapy. But the day before the surgery was scheduled, Sidney had a major heart attack, and Gertie chose to be at his bedside while he recovered. 3 weeks later, she did have the surgery, but by then the doctors felt it was really too late for the chemotherapy to be effective. Unbelievably, the melanoma never returned. Again, in 2006, she had another disease that caused her to be bedridden for some time, and it was also life-threatening. But again, she pulled through and returned to her active life. In short, Gertie was truly able to live and be active and productive up until the very end. And that itself is a miraculous blessing. Indeed, Gertie has left behind a rich legacy of memories that are part of the lives of the people she touched, and especially the lives of all of her family members and all of her friends. If someone were to ask, as the poem I referred to earlier did, how did she live life? What did she give? Had she a heart? How did she play her God-given part? We would surely answer, she lived her life to the fullest. She gave of herself all the time and played her part in life with exuberance, grace, and devotion. Her passing is a loss for so many who so much enjoyed spending time with her and celebrating life with her. But we will always have fond memories of Gertie that will be remembered and cherished and will always remain a part of us. In this way, Gertie's memory will continue as an everlasting blessing. Zichrono livracha. We'll now hear from her son, Brian.
How can anyone try to encapsulate the life of a 92-year-old that has seen so much and contributed so much? And it would be easier to talk about her life by way of her traits and her achievements and her attributes. But it's hard to begin. She was vibrant, she was talented, she was cheerful, colorful, caring, giving, loving, vivacious, bold. And these are just a few of her characteristics. She was very, very lively. The 5th of Adar, she's passing. Her great-grandchildren, my oldest daughter's children, asked me to say a few words just from the 3 or 4 days that she spent on her last trip from Sukkot and the memories that they had of her trip. She said, they told me to say, in their words, that my great-grandmother was filling us with strength. South Dominican passed on to us a tremendous strength, not only to the family, but specifically to the children, to the great-grandchildren. She gave us a lot of feeling of happiness and strength. And this Sukkot, she encouraged us to do tricks for her. And we were very happy and pleased that she was happy. we spoke Hebrew and she did not speak Hebrew, and she still gave us the strength that she understand what we were playing, what our tricks were. And the little one, Abigail, Tom's the younger girl who doesn't speak so well, even felt that everyone was speaking to Safta, and she also tried to speak to Safta. She pulled her out of herself, so that's even a bigger achievement in their eyes. Safta, we will miss you, and we hope for the strength that you gave us will continue. When will we see you, Safta? Everything is from heaven. We hope that you are happy there. I want to end only with a small thought that the word olam in Hebrew means world, olam, but it also comes from the word ne'elam. It's hidden, it's concealed. And God is concealed in our world. We don't see him outwardly. We can't see him outwardly so much, so we say that he's ne'elam. Everyone speaks of the time when there will be a ketz. Ketz is the end, ketz, the olam, the end of the world. But we're not talking about an end of the world. We're talking about the end of the concealment. God's concealment won't be hidden from us like it is now. I only hope that my mother brought that mind of the end of the concealment, when we'll all be able to see and feel and understand God in a stronger sense. Thanks to everyone that came to show respect for my mother.
Now we'll hear from her son, Mayor.
Sydney would like to share a few words about her grandmother, Mimi.
My grandmother was very special. I'm gonna miss her so much.
Mishnifnas Adar Marvin Basimcha. We talk about the entry of the month of Adar. We celebrate it with great Simcha and happiness. It's tough. It's tough to do that today. And while our mother's passing is painful, it's not a tragedy. It's tragic for us. But my mother, our mother, lived a blessed life. She knew it, and we knew it. For all the years we had with her, she was independent. She took care of herself. She was not a burden on anyone. And as you can imagine, growing up in a home with 4 boys was, I'm sure, very challenging. Certain descriptive words come up like pandemonium, bedlam. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times." I can assure you that my mother lived in interesting times. In our home, there was never a dull moment, always something exciting, an arm broken, a chin cut. But our house was a center of fun, of love, of wayward kids coming in and out the doors, friends who knew that Sydney and Gertie were cool. They were fun. They were adored by our friends and our cousins. We grew up in a very tight-knit family, and I would say my mother and father were almost like second parents to our cousins. Our cousins spent probably as much, if not more, time in our home as they did their own. I think Belinda and Merle, and Debbie and Ava, our home was always open door, could be in and out. My folks were always there to listen and to give support and love, unconditional love. They were really, really well matched for each other, my mother and father. were understanding, and everyone, I think, sort of wished that they were really their folks when they come over. I remember there were some friends who used to try to get my mom to smoke pot. So many times they used to try to, come on, Gertie, come on, you gotta try this. You know, it was just, that was the kind of people they were. You could, you know, cut up with her, and they were real, and you felt safe with them. You know, none of us should have been here today. Shouldn't have been here today, for sure. As the rabbi mentioned earlier, in 1968, my mother had melanoma. I was 6 years old. And I don't think any of us really understood the gravity of what that meant, melanoma, at that time. Today, you all know what melanoma is. She had a mole on her leg, and it was removed. It was determined to be melanoma, and as the rabbi mentioned, she was going in for some kind of experimental treatment at that time, and it was my father's heart attack. She chose to stay with my father, and by the time she was going for the treatment, she was told it was already too late. It was something, it moved into the lymph nodes. It would have been too late. She shouldn't have been here. She shouldn't have been here. That should have happened, and that would have been the tragedy. That would have been the tragedy, leaving 4 children behind. She got 45 more years. And then in 2006, she had cellulitis, back surgery. She was confined to her bed 4 to 6 months, and we thought that was it. There's no way. And she came back. She bounced back. She always bounced back. And as I mentioned, she was independent. You know, my family didn't like to come visit so much because she had her thing going on. I mean, every day, every week, she had a schedule. She had stuff happening all the time. She was driving here, driving there. Those of you who know her, you know, she lived life to the fullest. She had mahjong games 2 to 3 times a week. She went to senior lunches at this place, at Beth Yeshurun, at Israel, at Emmanuel, wherever it was, she was always there. She was always accompanying somebody or other on the piano, entertaining somebody, providing joy, providing happiness. Shabbos morning, Beth Yeshurun. Shabbos lunch at the bagel shop with her cronies. And then 7 Acres. You had to see my mother come alive at 7 Acres. The joy that she provided to the residents there. And she so looked forward every week. And I would call her after Shabbos on the phone. I'd call her and ask Mom what happened today. We always give me the whole rundown. Who all she saw, who was there, and what she played. And this one sang an operetta song. I mean, she just plopped down. She could do anything. She was just amazing. And very well loved and respected. And we're going to certainly miss her. And it will be impossible to fill the hole that she leaves, not only our family, but I know many, many, many people in this community whose lives she touched, whose lives she brought joy to. I just want to end by saying that my mom and dad had a very special song that was always their song. It was their swan song. And the words of that song was popular at the time they got married. And the lyrics were this: oh, it's a long, long while from May to December, but the days grow short when you reach September. When the autumn weather turns the leaves to flame, one hasn't got time for the waiting game. Oh, how the days dwindle down to a precious few. September, November. These few precious days I'll spend with you. These precious days I'll spend with you. Mom, I know that you're with Dad now. I know that you're happy. I know you're both very happy. And I hope you find peace and joy. Okay, consider trying to say this.
My grandmother was very special, and I'm going to miss her very much. She was very thoughtful and always cared about others. She told the best stories and very funny jokes. I think right now I speak for everyone. We're all going to miss her. But now I think she's in a better place. She's also with the love of her life, my grandfather, Sidney Denn. I never met him, but I know they were the perfect match. all take advantage of the time we all share. I will miss her more than anything. She is one of the most inspiring people I have ever met. I look up to her and I always will. She's a big role model and everyone should learn from her. I will miss her more than anything.
We have a few more minutes if anybody would like to say any other words, reflections.
First of all, thank you, friends and family and everyone, for coming today. I know it would mean a world to my mother. She loved all her friends, and she was we called her our little social butterfly. But she was always the life of the party. I think as Brian and Myra might have said, growing up in our home, every day was a new experience. I don't know what all kinds of pills she had to take to calm her down and get her going. It was just green ones and black ones and red, whatever it was. But she somehow managed with us. And I remember, I guess one of the most important times of the day for us, when the whole family got together, was dinner time. And it was always a fight, since there were 4 boys, to get to the table first. And as you can see, we all kind of shared and we all came out okay on that. But she was a wonderful woman, and she inspired me to try to do things in life and make something of myself. My father and her weren't able to go to university. And one thing they always really, really emphasize, you guys are going to go to school, you're going to make something of yourselves. And that was for me, it's been a drive for me to do better in life, to try to expound, to do better and be a better person. And I think from my parents both, it's given me enormous amount of strength and direction in life. Thank you.
I'm not really a public speaker, but I have to say a few words. My husband and I met Gertie probably around 5 years ago. And how we met her, because Beth, you sure we started the gathering place, and Gertie would play the piano, Michael would sing, they would get together to prepare for the music. And Gertie was one of a kind. You know, I've been to funerals, you see young people pass away, you say, oh my God, what tragedy. You go to funerals and somebody's elderly, you say, well, they lived a good life. Gertie lived a good life, but she was a young person. I can't say that she's gone, lived a good life, she lived a rightful age. She didn't. Gertie didn't live a rightful age. She was younger than so many friends younger than us. She was young at heart, young at spirit, giving. You would ask her, okay, Gertie, can we practice on such and such day? Well, got my marshal, got my breakfast, my lunch, my friends, but she would find the time. She was energetic and her mind was unbelievable. She knew everybody's name, she knew everything. She taught us so much. It was such a pleasure meeting all her boys. Unfortunately, this way, we know a lot about you all because she talked about her boys, her grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And again, she was such an amazing, amazing lady that we miss her terribly.
followed by families going to go to the Wharton Cemetery. It's a long drive, but and everybody's invited to come be there at the cemetery for the interment. Tonight at 7 o'clock, there will be a Shiva Minion at Gertie's home, which is 2701 Bellefontaine. It's between Brompton and Kirby. Bellefontaine is north of North Bracewell. And the apartment is A9. So that's at 7 o'clock tonight when everyone will be able to return from the cemetery to work. So please rise now for the memorial prayer.
El Malay Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, V'Mahalot Kedoshim Tohorim, Kezohar Hakiyam Mazhirim Et Nishmat Gitut Esther Bat Meir V'Pesach Shehalakha L'Olama Began Eden Tehei Menuchata V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkavaha v'nomaha